Well, hello there. My name is Lenny Hernandez, host of Arrow's Diversity and Inclusion Speaker Series. The purpose of this series is to provide information, insight, and empathy into experiences, walks of life, and causes that many of us may not have previously had the opportunity to learn about. Our job here at Arrow is to build community, and ensuring that everyone feels understood and welcomed is one of the most important aspects of that job. And we believe that doesn't just stop at our front doors. Today, I'd like to introduce you to Xavier Cortada, a professor and socially engaged eco-artist, as he sat down with Marilyn Brubaker, a resident at Rock Creek Senior Living, for a discussion about Earth Day and the environment. They talk about climate change, environmental conservation, and what actually can be done by everyday people to help the environment while protecting humanity. Please enjoy.
All of us have a role in sharing our love for one another and for all things that live on this beautiful planet.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and for you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to another Diversity and Inclusion Speaker Series. I am here with two incredible guests to speak on conservations, and we are kind of here to celebrate the environment as we also celebrate Earth Month. The two experts I have today, they are great. We were just chatting before we started recording. The first is a retired school teacher, K through college, and a resident at our Rock Creek Senior Living community, Marilyn. Marilyn, say hello.
Hello. Good to
Glad
be
to
here.
have you. Yes, exactly. I was going to say, glad to have you here. And then we have an environmental artist, professor of practice at the University of Miami, Xavier Cortada. Hello.
Hello, hello. Wonderful to be here sharing with you. Thank you so much, and great to connect with you, Marilyn.
Well, we have a lot of responsibilities with Earth Month and Earth Day. And so Xavier, tell us a little bit about yourself and why this is important.
Yeah, my name's Xavier. I am an artist in Miami, Florida. And Miami, Florida is a community that started, focusing on its environmental issues as we saw environmental degradation, in our beloved Everglades. But also with time, we're concerned about the impact of hurricanes and rising seas. So as an artist, initially I addressed a lot of issues that had to deal with more social concerns, addressing issues of juvenile violence, issues of race. But I decided about 15 years ago to pivot and also focus on issues of the environment. So we're here today to talk a little bit about how all of us are really environmental stewards, and all of us can play a role in not just protecting our environment today, but making sure that those we leave it to, our children and grandchildren, have a sustainable earth that they can enjoy and thrive in. So environmental art tries to let us understand and see our role in making that future reality a beautiful one for our progeny.
And Marilyn, tell us just a little bit about yourself, and then why don't you all just dive right in after that?
Sure.
Okay. Where to start? I guess I would like to say what got me involved in being interested in our environment was Silent Spring by Rachel Carson. And I also studied in college. I got the idea that we need to be aware of the horrors that our poor land and animals are facing. I want to read just a little bit of something from a book, if I may. Man, of course, is part of the ecosystem. His survival depends on the survival of hundreds of thousands of species of plants and animals. And that means a lot to me. Some years ago, when I moved to the farm, we had 200 plus monarch butterflies that came to our grove when they were ready to migrate. When I left there last fall, we had one monarch butterfly that came to the grove and migrated. That made me cry, thinking that we won't see the monarchs at the farm. We won't see them, period, very often, very much. And that's so true of so many of the animals and plants and people actually are involved as well. So I just want to say that is why I'm an environmentalist.
Oh my God, God bless you, and thank you for sharing that with me. I mean, you just really just in so many ways framed it for us from the eyes and perspective of someone who grew up seeing nature and its degradation before her very eyes in just one lifetime, you know. And I think that you and you know the fellow residents who I'm speaking to today are really the sentinels who have understood this incredible transformation in society, not just at the level where, you know, there's new development and technology and all that, but also a transformation in a negative way, in a consequential way, with our life-giving ecosystems, as you just finished saying, Marilyn. I thanks for that sentiment. I know we wanted to talk a little bit about, you know, some of the environmental challenges that we face today, and I'm just happy to be in a conversation with you about it. I don't know if you have ideas on it. I have some of what they are.
Well, I have for one of my theses for my master's, I studied water in Iowa to see about our aquifers, what we had as far as the future is concerned. And studying that, I learned an awful lot about the fact that the first aquifer, which was a non-confined or a confined aquifer, and it's gone. And I know of a company that made beer in Dubuque who had to fold up because they didn't have the right water to use because that aquifer is gone. Now there is one under that, and that's where we are in Iowa now. We're on called St. Peters. Yeah.
We're having similar issues here in Miami, right? Miami, a coastal community. You know, our water is also from the aquifer. A river of grass or Florida Everglades provides us with our drinking water, but saltwater intrusion from the rising seas are salinating our fresh drinking water. So Miamians now have to dig their wells further inland away from the Atlantic Ocean because the wells that we had built as the city developed at the water's edge are now more and more salinated. So these are other examples on the consequences. And the greatest environmental challenge I think we face is that we keep on polluting our planet, right? You know and read about all these treaties that we try to get passed through the United Nations, the climate treaties, the Paris talks, the COP meetings. We just had one in Egypt the year before that, in Scotland. These are all treaties where the world nations come together and they try to come together with an agreement on how to reduce the amount of fossil fuels that we consume. And what happens is year after year, we continue to produce more fossil fuels and consume more fossil fuels and pollute the planet. We literally put more carbon in the atmosphere this year than we did last year and are on a trend to do the same next year. And unless we reduce the amount of carbon we put in the atmosphere, the pollution, the fossil fueled pollution that we put in the atmosphere in 8 years, scientists tell us that we are beyond the point of return for a planet that's going to be warmer by 1.5 degrees Celsius. And when that happens, life on this planet begins taking a turn for the worse in an irreversible way. And to me, the biggest challenge we face today is our addiction to fossil fuels. Said that another way, our subsidy of fossil fuels. Said that another way, our permitting to continue drilling for fossil fuels and using present day sense of immediacy things like energy independence or the false dichotomy of needing jobs versus the environment as a way of pushing through policies that continue to pollute and degrade our environment for literally the lives of our grandchildren, instead of taking swift and immediate action today so that we could reduce the amount of carbon we pollute into the atmosphere by half in the next 8 years. And the political will isn't there. It hasn't happened. It's not happening in this country, and it's not happening across big polluters across our planet, including China and India. It is not happening. And that's really the biggest environmental issue that we are facing right now.
And also the generation today, the younger folk, if something goes wrong with something, they throw it away and buy a new one. That concerns me a lot. And I'm going to say, I think that's one of the reasons I started the Recycle Club in Alta, Iowa, where I was teaching at that time. I wanted the little children and the other kids up through 4th grade to have an opportunity to see what could be saved or changed or recycled. So we started a recycle club. I started with 40 children and ended up with 80 kindergartners through 4th grade. And we collected, you name it, the paper. Well, the first thing we did was color boxes, paint boxes, and put them in each classroom and in each office and in the lunchroom and everywhere. And people were to put their white paper in there instead of putting it in the waste can. And so once a week, those little cuties would take the plastic bag and go around and collect that paper and go through it. And I had an interesting experience early on. One of the children found a Kleenex in one of the boxes and had a fit that class didn't know they weren't supposed to put a Kleenex in the white paper, although it was white. So the kids were getting it.
Yeah, thank you for that service, for modeling that behavior early on and for pioneering that kind of work. I mean, that's literally what we as a society need to do. And you're absolutely right. I mean, those fossil fuels don't just go in our gas tanks. Those fossil fuels are used to propel the ships that bring container loads of products that are produced using those very fossil fuels in faraway places like China. And it is indeed our greed, our addiction, our consumerism, right? Our throwaway society. That's the problem we're having. And that's the addiction I'm talking about. It's not that people want to just drive their cars all day, is that they want to have new cars and that they want to have new clothes and that they want to not fix a fan, but throw the fan away if the blade is broken and buy a brand new one. And each and every one of those things, right, are wasteful. They're absolutely wasteful. And every one of those requires the use of fossil fuels to extract the minerals to produce them, to create the plastic to produce them, to use the fossil fuels to transport them, to use the fossil fuels to put them in retail locations, to use the fossil fuels to pick them up from that retail location, to put them in your house, and then 2 months later for you to dump them away and put them in a garbage dump that pollutes your aquifer. How wasteful, right? And our lack of mindfulness as a society to understand that is mind-numbing. Now, the good news is, Marilyn, I'm speaking to you and your residents across these 30 different sites who have a lifetime of experience in understanding this. You've been sentinels. You've seen the monarch butterflies decrease. You've seen your water flow reduced. You've seen the seasons shift and not happen the way that had traditionally. You see extreme weather and you are an eyewitness to that. You can tell stories about how things have changed in a negative way. So I hope that during this Earth Day, each of us have, each of you, right, do what I do, which is have an opportunity to share those stories with those who we love, those who will listen to us, and help them do what you did to your fourth graders, right? Help them become these environmentalists, show them how to recycle, show them how to live lives that are really more meaningful, because they understand that what they do isn't just for and about them, but it is about how they impact those they love and those they love but don't know, like people who live far away or people not yet born. We have this responsibility, I think, to one another. And by becoming environmentalists, right, by thinking about the environment, it's a very concrete way to ensuring that we show our love to animals that we co-evolved with, to people across the planet, and to people not yet born. And I think that modeling that kind of love is something that those of us in my generation and in your generation can really teach the younger generations about. And I think that's really, if there's one thing that we have gathered through our years, is the wisdom, right, of our experiences. And if we can understand the power and the value that we have in sharing those ideas, your story of the monarch butterfly was very touching to me, by the way. That was a really beautiful, really solemn and sad, but just a beautiful testament to someone who cares and cried by just seeing that butterflies had dwindled to one. Well, let's take those tears and do something with them in a positive way. Let's take action. I know you're in a room surrounded by beautiful plants that your fellow residents care for. Let's model that behavior for others so that they too can become more aware of environmental issues. I think you had a connection to the environment because you lived and worked and cared for a farm. You had to be in connection and in tune with nature. Many of your residents' grandchildren may not have that connection. They're working in offices and cubicles, working with technology. If they don't learn it from you, who are they going to learn it from? So let's make sure that you do what my grandmother did to me. She would tell me stories about her fishing village in Cuba, and she would explain, what the daily life was like. And I was fascinated as a young little 6-year-old listening to her. Let's take moments, right, during this Earth Month and share those stories with our children and great-grandchildren and grandchildren, and let them know a little bit about what we witness and how important and special that is. And to explain to them that in their decision-making, in their technology, in their businesses, as bankers, as lawyers, as teachers, as, people in retail, each of them have a role in addressing this environmental issue. And I think that's the gift that we can give them and our planet during Earth Day.
I do too. Yeah, I just want to mention that my oldest child, my daughter, was born on Earth Day. So we always celebrate Earth Day and birthday together.
Oh, how beautiful. Was she born in 1970 as well? Or okay.
Born in 1955. So
okay.
It was an Earth Day here in Iowa. We did that. Even back in my college days, we celebrated an Earth Day by cleaning up the campus. So that was a part of our contribution to the college.
Oh, thanks for letting me know that. I wasn't aware of that. I mean, and I think of myself as an environmentalist. I know that the first National Earth Day was on April 22nd in 1970, but there were statewide Earth Days way before then, huh?
There were, I'm not sure we called it Earth Day, but we called it Take Care of the Earth, I believe, was our motto, take care of the earth and do something like plant a tree. Trees were handed out in the schools, some of the schools, for the children to take home to plant.
Sure.
That was common.
Yeah, we would do Arbor Days as well. Maybe Arbor Day is what they called it, because I know we have National Arbor Day, which is a little bit different from Earth Day too.
Yeah, it is. But still, we need trees because we need the oxygen to give off. So we considered that an environmental issue to get more trees.
It's the most important one. It actually is. Actually, I think getting rid of our consumption and our fossil fuels. But what I do every single Earth Day is I get people to plant trees and green flags all over my community. Obviously, we celebrate the gift of plants and flowers, right? The ability for trees to cast some shade, at least here in Miami. And I think in Iowa, and across the Midwest, you're seeing kind of with summer temperatures that are extreme, like you've never witnessed before. So the more canopy you have, the cooler you can keep. Obviously, canopy during flood events help absorb some of that water, which is really, really important. And for us in Miami, birds migrate across Miami and up into New England and parts north. So these birds are hungry after flying across, the straits of Florida. So having a tree canopy that can provide them both food and shelter is an important component for biodiversity. One of the things I want to alarm us about today, and your monarch butterflies tell us that story, is that I'm sad to share what you already know, and that is that we are in the middle of the 6th mass extinction. Literally, that so many species of our beloved animals that we grew up with understanding that these are just the animals you see in the wilderness. Those animals will not be there by the time your small grandchildren get to be your age. We are literally making ours a planet that is not going to have the kind of evolutionary radiation so that the species that are here today can evolve into others. We're literally cutting off whole sets of species on that evolutionary tree that's just unthinkable to me, that we as humans have because of our lust for greed. Honestly, that's what it is at the end of the day, for just development, for creating monocultures, the way we deal with agriculture these days, the way we destroy our lands for farming instead of nurturing and caring for those soils, the amount of pesticides. Rachel, Carson's Silent Spring talked a lot about that, right? So the way that we take shortcuts just to have some instant gratification and profits today, instead of thinking in a more sustainable way so that we produce for us today, but we leave something for those in the future, is really an upside down way of thinking. And I know that at times people think that the environment is a political issue, and it is a political issue, but it shouldn't be a partisan one, right? It is political in the sense that we should have policy, right? We should have policy. That's politics. We should have policy that allows us to ensure that we don't poison our drinking water or deplete it, right? We should have policy that makes sure that our pollinators are going to be able to provide, the growth of agriculture, that we should have policies so that there's no drought in our fields and our corn isn't just drying up, right? I think we need to have policies, and that's politics. That's about taking resources, allocating them, making regulations. But my gosh, it should never be partisan or ideological. It should never be about hate. It should be about love. And it should be about taking stock in what matters. And what matters is our children and our grandchildren and the lives that are going to be here. We spent our entire lives doing nothing but educating. You did it for 50 years as a teacher. You care and love nothing more than 50 years worth of people that you saw as little babies become adults. Why would we relegate them to a future of extreme heat, extreme weather, poisoned or absent water? Why would we do that just so that we can save a few dollars today? Let's model a behavior, right? Let's model a behavior as elders who we are, elders who can share our knowledge with others and inspire them to love one another. Let's do that, right? I think that's what Earth Day is about. And I find that a moment to celebrate, a moment to bond, a moment to get those people who you think disagree with you and bring them in and tell them, no, we love you. We love you so much. We want what's best for you and your children. And if we can begin to do that, if we can use our experience to, we've been through families and we've seen silly fights erupt from nonsense. So we have the experience of knowing what a little tension is, right? We're elders. We got this. We know how to get two people who aren't talking to one another to come together and reconnect. Well, we need to do that across America. Our nation's so divided, politically divided, a lot of finger pointing, right? let's find common ground. Let's find something we agree on. I think we can all agree on water, right? I think we can all agree that we shouldn't have extreme summers. I think we understand that extreme climate events, whether there's tornadoes or hurricanes or winter storms that are unexpected or extreme flooding, these are all things that we shouldn't sit here and have an ideological reason on that. Let's please follow the science. The science isn't lying to us. Let's become science literate and not use science for partisan issues, but for policy making. And let's bring people together, understand that, we're one people. We are Americans. We all love one another and we want our nation to thrive. And if our environment is broken, our nation cannot. It'll be chaos. It'll be hunger and scarcity and disasters. So to me, I think that's what I care about during Earth Day. What do you think in your community? I know that you have a cohort there that care for the plants, but do you think when they watch our video in your community, Maryland, that this will resonate with most of your neighbors who you live with there? Do you think that this is something that they could connect with?
I don't know. I don't know. It's just like I don't know if we can stop. Like the ice caps, ice caps. And so I think we can stop all that. I don't know what people think. I'm sorry to say that I think most people are more concerned, and I don't mean here at Rock Creek, more concerned with things that are not as important as our world. I would think people who care about the world do something about it. And I hope they do. I hope they take this to heart, that we need to save our Earth for future generations. That really concerns me about having the resources, animals and the plants and so forth and so on that we have now. I hate to see all that gone for our future generations.
I agree with you. Actually, I actually do. I do agree with you, Marilyn. I really do. I do think that people care about the here and now more about than.
Yes, I think so.
I agree with you, and I think that people in our society focus on the petty issues that divide us than in celebrating the things that unite us. I do agree with you, but it doesn't mean that we have to accept that that's going to be always that way. So we need to keep. But you're right. And in fact, let me just explain to you. That's why when I started talking about my art, I saw that people in Miami were completely oblivious to the fact that I went to Antarctica. I was in Antarctica as part of the National Science Foundation. And I was there. Scientists put a chunk of ice in my hand and said, "This is melting. And when it melts, it will drown your city." And then I looked and became curious about the science. So I came back to Miami and created a series of art paintings using that melted ice. I made some paintings in Antarctica and brought them back to Miami. And for more than 15 years now, since 2006, have been creating art projects about trying to reframe the way people understand what's important. And that's what I do with my art. I use art in all of its forms. Sometimes it's paintings, sometimes it's performances, participatory things, but I use art in all of its forms to work across disciplines, across communities, to invite people to be part of the conversation. And I think that that's how you and I can have our wish, which is that more people care about the important things, is by making those things important and personal to them. So as an example, when I do my tree planting project, I have this big green flag and I plant it in front of your home. I'm arguing that your property value increases in urban communities if there's a tree-lined road that you live in as opposed to a bare road. I also argue that your electricity costs are going to diminish if your house isn't heated, because instead of having these heat islands, you have a canopy that allows for some shade. I argue that your home is going to be protected from inundation if you have more trees that will absorb the water during the flood. So I make it personal to the person. At the beginning, a lot of my work was about protecting wetlands, huge series of works I created across a bunch of continents on endangered animals. So I've created art in got in every continent. I've done over 150 art installations. I've spoken to I don't know how many people. I do a lot of work around the environment. And what I've noticed is that I need to make the artwork connect with a person who is oblivious about the issue. I'm not trying to persuade, the wonderful, beloved Marilyns of this world. She knows all about the issue. I'm trying to persuade the people who haven't met Marilyn yet. I'm trying to persuade the people who don't know about the environment by making it personal to them. And my hope is that each of your residents understand that they have that role through the wisdom that they have, right? Through a lifetime of understanding, that they can share that wisdom with people who trust and love them, right? In other words, it's grandma talking to me. I'm going to listen to grandma. I love grandma. I trust grandma, right? So I think that helps us understand it. And if you can just put it in that way, I think one of the things I like to do is I don't try to convince people about anything. I just try to pique their curiosity so that they want on their own to find that solution. And I also try to diffuse issues, like, okay, if you don't believe that climate is caused by pollution and the human impacts of climate, if you think that it is a cyclical thing, you still understand that there are extreme events happening and we need to plan for those events. So what are we doing as a society to plan for that? So I try to meet people where they are. I think that we can begin doing that too. And if nothing else, I think there's one thing I want to share, and that's a little bit more sort of personal and not so much about trying to persuade others. And it's basically what you have in your room full of chlorophyll. And that is that here in my home, I just walk into my garden and I am mesmerized by an orchid, but also by the ant walking across the stem of that orchid, and by the squirrel that's on my oak tree, and about the blue jay that's fighting with another blue jay, and a mockingbird, and a cardinal. Like I also I think can escape, right? In moments where I may not be, as jovial and as happy, I can just escape and be transported into another place and be completely amused, although I'm by myself, just in nature. And I think you and all of your residents can also celebrate Earth Month and Earth Week and Earth Day, April 22nd, in that way, by just, looking at life in all its beauty and dimensions, including in the world of plants and animals that surround us. So in many ways, what I want us to take away from this beautiful conversation is that each of us have a role. Some of ours are like yours, Marilyn, which is a huge multi-decade role, serving thousands of people with love and concern through education. Others of us have smaller roles, but all of us have a role in sharing our love for one another and for all things that live on this beautiful planet. And that we also have a gift of taking in nature and looking at it and being immersed in it and celebrating that each of us are eternal, because each of us are a part of that beautiful line called life that spans across infinity in our beautiful planet. And it's been a true honor, Marilyn, to meet you. I'm so proud. You've made my Earth Month. You really have. I don't get to speak with people like this for such a long period of time, from across, geographic areas. And just to have your wisdom and to have you share your voice and to listen to what you care about matters. And I know that, you've come to this community, because you had your own home and you had to come to this community. But I just want you to understand that the fellowship that you're building there, and even this conversation here, has had a real positive impact, something that wouldn't have happened had you not been in this community. So there's always there's always a momentum that we can build around the changes that come into our lives. And I just want to celebrate you on this Earth Day for a life of love and giving. Thank you so much, Marilyn.
Thank you. It's been a real pleasure to meet you and to listen, because it's so great to find someone who cares like you do. I appreciate that a lot.
Such a great conversation between the two of you, Marilyn and Xavier. Thank you so much. Xavier, if there are people who are interested to learn more, could you, or do you know resources in which right now anybody can look it up and find it?
Yeah, so look, I delivered a TED Talk. It's had about 1 million hits already. And I don't know,
Yeah.
it's a really long, thing on the website, but I think if you just go to my website, it's on the home page there. So if you could just, put cortada.com, when they go to the home page, there's a link there, and it's a TED Talk where I talk about the issue of sea level rise, but also about protecting wetlands and the power of art in helping people understand that. It's a nice TED Talk. It's for 10 minutes. You may want to share that with your residents. Also, in that same page, cortada.com, at the top, there's a navigation bar on the website. And if you click on projects at the top of the website, cortada.com, and you click on projects, you can see many of the projects I've done all over the world on addressing this issue. And then if you want to learn more, if you go to the website and you click on foundation, you can see what my foundation does to help address this issue. And if you want to be a part of that foundation, you're more than welcome to share and participate. There's room for participation in many ways. You can do everything from download a toolkit and do a project in your community. You can also, help support any of the activities that we do through our efforts. So places to learn, places to engage, places to contribute. But what I really want you to do is to find inspiration in your lives and in your experiences. That is the source of inspiration. You have so much power as residents of your community. You really do. To be able to continue transforming. You have created a generation of individuals. Your experiences have shaped society to this point, and there is no stopping you yet. And all I'm saying is that right there from your community, you still have agency and power through your wisdom to continue to educate, inspire, and allow us to continue loving. So yeah, go to my website, but I'd rather you go into your hearts and open them up for the rest of the world to hear everything you have to say.
People need to understand that it's not a political issue; it's an environmental issue.
I think it's a moral. I think it's a moral issue. I think it's a moral issue. It really is at the end of the day.
Yes.
And spirituality, faith. I wish the faith community was, as adamant as it could be in protecting this. So I that needs to happen in a more profound way. And what I really wanted to share with you, Marilyn, and I really mean this. Normally, I get my, I'm a professor, so I get my inspiration from students, right? I get inspiration from the kids that I train. It really fills my heart that they care. But I want to tell you, I'm really inspired by you too. Like I literally get inspiration from you, and that's all I'm trying to. That's a joy I'm trying to share here right now. That don't think that it's a unidirectional thing. Don't think like I want you and your residents to know that you can inspire people like me who are experts and practitioners in this field. That story that you shared with me about nature and then your trajectory that what you've done all your life is motivating to me as a person. So I didn't want to talk about what you shared with me earlier about your husband passing and you having to move there. And of course, my dad passed recently, and we all go through suffering in our lives, but it's an opportunity for you to have a next phase of your life, and here you are just several months later having a profound impact again. So I think that Marilyn, who taught little fourth graders, is now teaching a 58-year-old and teaching people across 30 different communities. You still have voice, you still have a role. And I just want to tell you that you inspired me today. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. You're very kind.
So well said, Xavier. Thank you so much. Marilyn, thank you as well. Such a great conversation. Thank you both. And until next time, we will see you again on our Diversity and Inclusion Speaker Series.
Thanks.
And I think to myself, what a wonderful world.